Arnold challenged Clint Eastwood to arm wrestle. It shocked everyone. Arnold Schwarzenegger was halfway through his second plate of food at the party when he leaned across the table and said something to Clint Eastwood that made the entire room go quiet. What happened next left everyone in that room with a story they would tell for the rest of their lives. It was the summer of 1977 at a private gathering in the Hollywood Hills. The house belonged to a well-known film producer, and the guest list that night read like a who's who of Hollywood royalty. Directors, actors, producers, and power players were packed into every room, spilling out onto the wide wooden deck that looked out over the shimmering lights of Los Angeles. Arnold Schwarzenegger did not quite belong there yet. He was 29 years old. He had won the Mr. Olympia bodybuilding title 6 times. He had made a few small movies that most people in that room had never seen. He spoke English with an Austrian accent so thick that some guests had to ask him to repeat himself 2 or 3 times before they understood what he was saying. He did not have a hit movie. He did not have a famous name outside of bodybuilding circles. He was there because a friend of a friend had passed along an invitation, and Arnold had never once in his life said no to an opportunity to walk into a room full of successful people. Clint Eastwood, on the other side of the table, was everything Arnold was not yet. Clint was 47. He was one of the biggest stars on the planet. His Dirty Harry films had made him a cultural icon. His westerns had made him a legend. He walked into every room like he already owned it. So not because he was rude, but because confidence came off him the way heat comes off pavement in August. He was lean and quiet, and he had a way of looking at people that made them feel like he could see straight through them. The two men had been introduced earlier in the evening and had exchanged the usual pleasantries. But now, a few hours into the party, Arnold had made his way back to the corner of the room where Clint was sitting with a small group of friends. Nobody in that room could have predicted what happened next. Arnold pulled out a chair, sat down directly across from Clint, and placed his right elbow on the table. His massive forearm rose into the air like a tree trunk. His hand was open, waiting. "Clint," Arnold said, loud enough for the small group around them to hear, "I want to arm wrestle you." The room went quiet the way a room goes quiet when something happens that nobody expected. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People turned around. Someone put down their drink. Clint Eastwood looked at Arnold for a long moment. He looked at the outstretched arm. He looked at the hand the size of a dinner plate. He looked back at Arnold's face, which was completely serious. Then Clint did something nobody expected. He smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a nervous smile. A real one. The kind that starts in the eyes before it reaches the mouth. "Son," Clint said, his voice as dry and unhurried as a desert breeze, "I've been in standoffs with outlaws, gunfighters, and some of the meanest men Hollywood ever put on a screen, and not once have I backed down from a challenge." He set his own elbow on the table. The group around them erupted. People were grabbing each other's arms. Someone shouted for everyone to come over. Within 30 seconds, a crowd had formed around that corner table, 3 and 4 people deep, craning their necks to see. What nobody in that room understood yet was that this was not really about arm wrestling at all. This was about 2 men from completely different worlds, at completely different stages of their lives, finding out something important about each other. And what they found out that night would shape a friendship that lasted for decades. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, and the awards stopped coming, and the only thing left was who a person truly was underneath all the fame. But we're getting ahead of the story. Let's go back to the beginning. When Arnold Schwarzenegger grew up in a small village in Austria called Thal, the village was so small that most people outside of Austria had never heard of it. His family did not have much money. His father was the local police chief. They did not own a refrigerator until Arnold was older. They certainly did not have a television. What they had was a father who believed that discipline and hard work were the only things that separated people who made something of their lives from people who did not. Arnold's father pushed his sons hard. Some people looking back would say he pushed too hard, but Arnold took every bit of that pressure and turned it into fuel. When Arnold was 14 years old, he walked into a gym for the first time and picked up a weight. Something clicked inside him that day that had never clicked before. He had found the thing he was meant to do. Not because lifting weights was easy. It was not. It was painful and slow and required the kind of patience that most teenagers do not have. But Arnold was not most teenagers. He trained with a focus that his coaches found almost unsettling. He would ride his bicycle to the gym in freezing weather. He trained on days when he was sick. He trained on days when he had no partner and no motivation and no reason other than the simple fact that the goal was still out there waiting for him. By the time he was 20, Arnold had won his first major bodybuilding title. By 23, he was Mr. Olympia for the first time. By the time he walked into that Hollywood party in 1977, he had won that title 6 times and was considered by most experts to be the greatest bodybuilder who had ever lived. But Arnold was not satisfied. He wanted to be a movie star. Everyone told him it was impossible. His accent was too thick. His name was impossible to pronounce. His body was too big for most roles. The Hollywood machine did not know what to do with him. Arnold heard all of this feedback and treated it the same way he treated every obstacle he had ever encountered in his life. He ignored it and kept going. Now across that party table, Clint Eastwood had heard a version of Arnold's story, not all of it, just enough to understand that the young man sitting across from him was not the average guy at a Hollywood party. There was something in Arnold's eyes that Clint recognized because he had seen it in the mirror many years before. Hunger, real hunger, not for food, not for fame, but for the chance to prove something. Clint had been that guy once, young and unknown and so sure of himself that other people found it either inspiring or annoying depending on their mood. He had walked into rooms where he did not belong and refused to leave until someone took him seriously. He had been laughed at and overlooked and told no so many times that the word had almost lost its meaning. Almost. Clint Eastwood understood exactly what Arnold was doing by challenging him to an arm wrestle in front of all those people. He was not just trying to test his strength, he was trying to get noticed. He was trying to force the most important man in the room to look at him, really look at him, and decide he was worth remembering. And Clint respected that more than he could say. Their hands clasped together above the table. Arnold's hand was significantly larger. His forearm was bigger around than most men's calves. The physical mismatch was obvious to everyone watching. Someone started counting down. 3, 2, 1, go. What happened in the next few seconds became one of the most talked about moments in private Hollywood history. Arnold pushed hard from the start. Of course he did. He was one of the strongest men alive. His arm was a machine built through 15 years of daily training, hundreds of thousands of repetitions, more pain and sweat and sacrifice than most people could comprehend. But Clint Eastwood did not go down. Not right away. For nearly 30 seconds, that table held 2 men locked in a contest that the crowd around them could barely believe. Clint's face did not change. His breathing did not quicken. He looked at Arnold with those steady eyes and he held on. Not because he thought he could win, but because he was not the kind of man who gave up the moment things got hard. When Arnold finally won, and he did win, there was a pause. The crowd exploded. People were cheering and laughing and shaking their heads in disbelief. Someone spilled a drink. Someone else was already telling the story to a person on the other side of the room, even though it had happened 4 seconds ago. Arnold raised both fists above his head like he had just won the Olympics. But Clint was the one who surprised everyone. He stood up, reached across the table, and shook Arnold's hand. Not a polite handshake, a real one, the kind you give someone you respect. "Son," Clint said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I don't know what it is you're trying to do in this town, but whatever it is, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it." The room went quiet again. Arnold, who had spent the entire evening performing and joking and pushing his way into conversations, went completely still. He looked at Clint for a moment without saying anything. Then he nodded once. Just once. People who were in that room later said that something passed between those 2 men in that moment that went beyond words. Something that both of them understood without needing to talk about it. 2 men who had come from nothing. 2 men who had been told no so many times that the word had become meaningless. 2 men who had decided very early in life that other people's opinions of what was possible did not apply to them. For Arnold, those words from Clint Eastwood landed in a place that was deeper than he expected. He had heard encouragement before. His coaches had believed in him. His training partners had cheered him on. But there was something different about hearing it from Clint Eastwood, in a room full of Hollywood's most powerful people, after they had just arm wrestled in front of an audience. It felt real. It felt like being handed a key. After the party, Arnold could not stop thinking about what Clint had said. He repeated it to friends. He wrote it in his journal. He turned it over in his mind the way you turn a stone over in your hand, looking at every angle of it, feeling its weight. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. The thing about those words was that they were not magic. They were not complicated. They were not some great secret that nobody else had figured out. And they were simple words that most people had heard 100 times in 100 different forms. But coming from Clint Eastwood on that particular night, after that particular moment, they meant something completely different to Arnold. They were permission, not permission to try. Arnold had never needed that. He had been trying since he was 14 years old. They were permission to believe that trying was enough, that showing up in rooms where you did not belong was not arrogance but courage, that wanting things that seemed out of reach was not foolishness but vision. Arnold went home that night and called his friend and training partner Franco Columbu. "Something happened tonight," Arnold told him. Franco asked what. Arnold thought about it for a moment. "I arm wrestled Clint Eastwood," he said. Franco laughed and asked who won. "I won," Arnold said, "but that's not the part that matters." There is a version of this story that could stop right there and still be worth telling. Two famous men at a party, a silly challenge, a handshake, a few kind words. That would be enough. But the story did not stop there. Because what happened between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Clint Eastwood in the years that followed that night was something quieter and more meaningful than an arm wrestling match. It was a friendship, a real one. The kind that is built not on fame or shared projects or being seen together at the right events, but on genuine respect between two people who recognized something in each other that they valued. In the months after the party, Arnold made a point of staying in touch with Clint. Not constantly, but not in a way that felt like networking. Just enough to let Clint know that he had not forgotten that night and that the words meant something. Clint, for his part, was watching. He watched as Arnold pushed forward with his acting career against every piece of advice he received. He watched as Arnold took small roles and studied the craft and improved steadily in the way that only truly determined people improve. He watched as Arnold refused to change his name or soften his accent or make himself smaller to fit into the mold that Hollywood kept trying to push him into. He saw himself in all of it. The year 1982 came. Conan the Barbarian was released. Arnold Schwarzenegger became a star. Not just a movie star, a phenomenon. Many audiences around the world fell in love with this enormous Austrian man who moved through a movie like a force of nature and somehow, against all logic and expectation, made you believe every second of it. The accent that everyone said would hold him back became part of what made him unforgettable. The body that people said was too big for movies became exactly the thing that set him apart. When Clint heard the news about Conan's success, he called Arnold. "I told you," Clint said. Arnold laughed. "You told me," Arnold agreed. What the public did not know, what the movie magazines and entertainment shows did not report, was that during the years when Arnold was struggling to break through, Clint had quietly put in a few words on his behalf with people who had the power to open doors. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that Arnold even knew about at the time. Just small moments where Clint told the right person that the young Austrian was worth a serious look. That is what real support looks like. It does not announce itself. It does not ask for credit. It just shows up when it matters and disappears before anyone can make a big deal out of it. Arnold found out about it years later, by accident, during a conversation with a mutual friend. He called Clint immediately. "Why didn't you tell me?" Arnold asked. Clint was quiet for a moment. "You didn't need to know," he said. "You were going to make it anyway. I just moved a few things out of the road." Arnold was quiet too, then he said, "Thank you." Clint said, "You already thanked me. You made it." The friendship between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Clint Eastwood is not one that Hollywood talks about very much. It does not fit the usual narrative about how success happens in that town. It does not involve a dramatic mentor-student relationship or a famous collaboration or a public moment of one star lifting up another in front of cameras. It is quieter than that. It is two men who met at a party when one of them was unknown and the other was at the top of the world. Two men who recognized something in each other across a table in a silly arm wrestling contest that most people would have forgotten by the next morning. two men who chose to take each other seriously. Over the years, they crossed paths at events and gatherings and occasionally on projects that brought them into the same circles. They always made time for each other. They always had real conversations, not the surface-level exchanges that fill most Hollywood interactions, but actual conversations about work and life and what it means to keep going when going gets hard. Clint, who was nearly 2 decades older than Arnold, sometimes talked about what it had been like to grow old in a business that worshipped youth. He talked about how the work changed as you got older, how what you looked for in a role changed, how what mattered to you changed. Arnold listened to all of it. He listened the way young men only listen when they know they are in the presence of someone who has already traveled the road they are on. And Clint listened too, because Clint, for all his success and all his experience, knew that there were things Arnold understood that he did not. The experience of coming from a completely different country and a completely different culture and building a life from scratch in a place where nobody knew your name. The experience of having to learn everything, not just the craft of acting, but the language, the customs, the unwritten rules of an industry that did not come with a guidebook. There is a kind of courage in that which even the most successful native-born Hollywood star cannot fully understand. And Clint was wise enough to know that. In interviews over the years, both men have been asked about each other. Their answers are always warm but brief. Neither one is the type to gush or over-explain. That is part of what makes them so alike, even though on the surface they seem like complete opposites. Arnold, the big and booming man who fills every room he walks into. Clint, the lean and quiet one who makes every room feel calmer just by being in it. But underneath those very different surfaces, the same thing. The same absolute refusal to give up. The same belief that hard work matters more than talent. The same understanding that the most important competition you will ever have is not with other people, but with the version of yourself that wants to quit. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor of California. When the results came in, one of the first calls he received was from Clint Eastwood. "Well," Clint said, "you did it again." Arnold laughed. "I did it again." "How does it feel?" Clint asked. Arnold thought about it for a moment. He thought about the small village in Austria. He thought about his father and the bicycle rides to the gym in the freezing cold. He thought about the Hollywood party in 1977 and a table and an arm wrestling match and a handshake and a few simple words from a man who did not have to say them. "It feels," Arnold said, "like everything was worth it." Clint was quiet for a second. "It always does," he said. There is a small detail about that night at the party in 1977 that most people do not know. A detail that only came out years later when someone who was in the room told a journalist about it during a long interview about old Hollywood. After the arm wrestling match, after the handshake and the words and the crowd and all of it, after Arnold had moved on to another part of the party and Clint had returned to his conversation with friends, one of the people in Clint's group leaned over and asked him about it. "What do you think of that guy?" the person asked. Well, Clint considered the question for a moment. "I think," Clint said slowly, "that 10 years from now, we're all going to know his name." He paused. "And I think he already knows it." That is the thing about people who are going to make it. Not the ones who think they might make it or hope they make it or wonder if maybe someday they could make it. The ones who are actually going to make it, they already know. You can see it in the way they walk into rooms they do not belong in. You can see it in the way they put their elbow on a table and look across at the most powerful person in the room and say, without a hint of doubt or embarrassment, "Let's see what you got." You can see it in the way they take a loss and make it into something worth more than a win. Because Arnold Schwarzenegger lost something that night and gained something far greater. He lost an arm wrestling match to no one because he won, but he gained the attention and respect of a man who knew talent and drive when he saw it. A man who had been exactly where Arnold was standing and had fought his way forward one impossible step at a time. He gained, in the most unexpected way, a friend. And friendship between people who truly respect each other, the kind that is built on honesty and history, and the shared understanding of what it costs to chase something that most people tell you is out of reach. That kind of friendship does not come along very often. When it does, it is worth more than any trophy or award or #1 box office weekend. It is worth more than winning. Well, people sometimes ask what made Arnold Schwarzenegger different from the thousands of other young men who came to Hollywood with big dreams and went home with nothing but the memory of trying. The answer is not simple because the answer never is when it comes to people who beat the odds. But part of the answer is this. Arnold understood something very early that many people never understand at all. The people who are already at the top are not your enemies. They are your teachers if you are brave enough to learn from them. They are your doors if you are bold enough to knock. Most people stand outside looking in and waiting for someone to invite them. Arnold walked in and put his elbow on the table. That is not arrogance, that is faith. Faith that you have something worth offering. Faith that your presence in a room adds something to it. Faith that the person across the table, no matter how famous or powerful or distant they seem, is still just a person who started somewhere and worked their way forward, just like you are doing right now. Clint Eastwood saw that faith across the table that night. He recognized it because it had once lived inside him too. And instead of putting it down or ignoring it or sending it back to wherever it came from, he chose to honor it with a handshake, with 4 words, with the kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes support that nobody ever hears about, but that changes everything anyway. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. 4 words. That is all it takes sometimes. 4 words from the right person at the right moment can reach down into a place inside you that nothing else can touch and light something there that burns for the rest of your life. Arnold Schwarzenegger built one of the most remarkable careers in the history of entertainment, 7 Mr. Olympia titles. Blockbuster films seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world. The governorship of the largest state in America. A life story so unlikely and so extraordinary that if someone wrote it as fiction, the publisher would send it back and say, nobody would believe this. Clint Eastwood directed and starred in some of the finest films ever made. He won Academy Awards. He built a body of work that will be studied and celebrated long after all of us are gone. Both men became legends. But the moment that connects them is not the moment anyone would have predicted. It is not a film they worked on together, or an award ceremony where they shared a stage or a famous photograph that captured them at the height of their powers. It is a party in the Hollywood Hills in the summer of 1977. A table, an arm, a smile from a man who had no reason to be generous, but chose to be generous anyway. And 2 people who found in each other something they had not expected to find. Not a mentor and a student, not a star and an admirer. 2 equals, even if one of them did not know it yet. Today, when people talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger's success, they talk about the training in the movies and the determination and the accent that nobody thought would work. They talk about the impossible odds and the relentless drive and all the reasons he should not have made it and all the reasons he did anyway. They do not often talk about a party in 1977 or a man who set his elbow on a table and refused to back down, and another man who looked across at him and saw not a curiosity or a novelty, but a future. But that moment mattered. It mattered because all moments matter, even the ones that look small from the outside. Even the ones that look like jokes or party games or the kind of silly things that get forgotten by the next morning. The right moment with the right person at the right time can change the direction of a life. And sometimes the right moment looks like an arm wrestling match. Sometimes the right person is the last one you would have thought to challenge. And the right time is always, always right now. The story of Arnold and Clint in that Hollywood Hills house is more than a fun piece of celebrity trivia. It is a reminder that greatness does not stay neatly inside the boundaries we build for it. It shows up at parties and across tables and in the grip of a handshake and in 4 simple words spoken by someone who did not have to say anything at all. It is a reminder that the path from unknown to legendary is almost never straight and almost never traveled alone. Someone always holds a door. Someone always says the words that land in the right place at the right time. Someone always looks across a table at a young and hungry and slightly impossible person and chooses, for no reason except goodness, to take them seriously. Arnold Schwarzenegger became one of the most famous people on earth. Clint Eastwood already was. But on one summer evening in 1977, sitting across a table in a crowded room full of people who would not have believed what they were watching if you told them the ending, they were just 2 men. One of them reached out his hand, the other one took it, and the world was never quite the same. If this story of courage, friendship, and the power of one person believing in another moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. Share this with someone in your life who is still putting their elbow on the table and waiting for someone to take them seriously. They need to hear this story today. Have you ever had someone believe in you at exactly the right moment? Tell us about it in the comments below. And ring that notification bell so you never miss another story about the moments that change everything.